Now look, there's always going to be some compromise when choosing a gaming monitor. For example, do you go with a 1080p 240Hz monitor to get the best competitive advantage in first-person shooters, or do you go with a slower but higher resolution 1440p or 4K panel? Maybe you want the best experience in those beautiful single-player games. Well, there is a third option, and that's basically just to spend a bunch of money and get this. This is the Asus PG279QM. It's a 27-inch 1440p 240Hz IPS gaming monitor, and if you have a diverse game library, you play a bunch of different games, and you kind of want that balance of high resolution but still high frame rate, this is about as close to a zero compromise gaming experience as I think you can get right now, especially if you are into first person shooters. This thing is blazingly quick. I mean, I can't wait to show you the UFO motion test for this one, because I do think that this might actually be the fastest IPS monitor that I've tested when it comes to response time and motion performance. So on the exterior, there's not a whole lot of surprises here. It's your typical looking ROG branded gaming monitor that looks like it came straight out of an alien spaceship. Most of the construction here is plastic, but again, we do see that really heavy duty metal tripod stand, which thankfully doesn't extend forward too much. It doesn't go in front of the display, but it does extend outwards. So that might bother some people when it comes to mouse pad positioning. Seeing as this is a larger 27-inch display though, you will be positioning the monitor a little bit further away from you, so that stand becomes less of an issue. Thankfully though, Asus really know what they're doing when it comes to adjustability. You've got a ton of adjustment in terms of height, pivot, swivel, and tilt. Also, I will mention the VESA mounting because that is how I've been using this monitor for testing. It's a little bit tricky. The VESA 100x100 mounting threads are hidden behind these two plastic covers that can be carefully removed with a flathead screwdriver, and then you should be pretty much good to go with any monitor arm. So 1440p 240Hz, that spec is really interesting, and depending on what monitor you're currently using, you might look at that in a different way. Personally, as a user of a 1080p 240Hz monitor for first-person shooters, to me it's basically like getting a 78% increase in pixel count while stretching that over a larger panel. And we can actually drive that spec pretty confidently with some of today's GPUs, granted that you can find one and afford to put one in your system in the first place. Pretty much for any 1440p 240Hz display, I'd probably recommend an RTX 3070 at minimum, but ideally a 3080 and above. This monitor can get really bright at around 405 nits, which is plenty in even the brightest of rooms, and the white point is a little bit on the cooler side at around 6800 Kelvin. Colors are exceptionally good with 99% plus of sRGB and Adobe RGB and over 93% of DCI-P3. So this is totally a monitor that you could use for some color critical work on the side if needed too. That's also because there's a dedicated sRGB mode here to clamp the color spectrum, although I will say that it does look significantly flatter and desaturated than the sRGB mode on my LG 27GN950. I would actually recommend switching over to the punchier wide gamut mode though if you prefer more saturation and vibrance, especially for competitive gaming. Even if it isn't the intended color space, I think most people will agree that it looks better. The sRGB mode by comparison is almost like gaming in black and white, even if it is more pure. Now, something that I was initially disappointed with here was the lack of any backlight strobing or motion blur reduction mode. As we've seen with techniques like DIAC and Asus's own ELMB, these can hugely reduce the amount of motion blur that you get during fast-paced moments. However, when I saw how good this monitor was without it, that completely changed my mind. In fact, I can confidently say that this is the best looking IPS panel that I've tested when it comes to motion clarity and response times, with the best overdrive setting to use here being the esports mode. The extreme mode has some pretty noticeable overshoot and the off mode has some visible ghosting, but both normal and esports provide some seriously good response time performance. I can't stress how good this actually is until we put it next to some other high refresh rate enthusiast 1440p monitors like the LG 27GP850 and the Aorus FI27QX. Both of these monitors, which I concluded had really good results for an IPS panel, but out of the three, the Asus is the clear winner with almost zero ghosting on the yellow area of the UFO or the lights. Again, just to put this into perspective, it's significantly better than Asus's own 1080p 360Hz monitor, and I'd say that this this is probably the best UFO result that I've seen, not factoring in backlight strobing modes like DIAC or OLED panels. Now I still am curious to see how ELMB would have looked on this display, but Asus probably left it out for a good reason. Overall though, I am seriously impressed with what the PG279QM can do. So who exactly is this monitor for? Well, in my opinion, I see this as an upgrade for those who might be currently using a 1080p 240Hz or 144Hz monitor, but now have the GPU horsepower to drive a lot more pixels. Now, if you're someone who only plays CSGO and Valorant, then those extra pixels aren't really going to benefit you. You're probably better off with an XL2546K. And if you're someone who only plays games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Metro Exodus, the 240Hz tax here is just not worth paying extra for. But if you primarily play games like Call of Duty Warzone, Apex Legends, and Battlefield, or if you have a fairly diverse game library where you play a bunch of different games, this is probably the most end-game gaming monitor that you can buy right now. Compared to LG's 27GP850 though, honestly, the price difference of about $350 to go from 180Hz there to 240Hz here just isn't going to be worth it for most people. And I'd still consider the 27GP850 to be one of the best gaming monitors that you can buy, especially factoring in that price. However, sparing no compromise, the PG279QM does look to be the best 1440p monitor that you can buy right now. The extra cash here does actually buy you better performance, and for some people they would consider that difference worth it. Also, pricing at around $850 US puts it right around other 1440p 240Hz options, so it is fairly competitive. I can say that for me at least, this is a monitor that I am actually considering buying if and when the prices in Australia do go down. The colors and the extra pixels are a welcome upgrade over my XL2546K, especially when Nvidia's digital vibrance option is cranked almost to max. And I've mentioned this in previous videos as well, but the extra pixels do actually help with visibility in certain FPS titles. Granted that you also have enough GPU performance that those extra pixels won't be slowing you down. So there it is, the PG279QM, and I think it's the best 1440p monitor that you can buy right now. I would just recommend that you take a look at as well the 27GP850 from LG and just consider whether that extra refresh rate here is kind of worth it for you. I think the better option for most people is going to be the LG. Most people don't need beyond 180Hz, but if you are just seriously looking for a zero compromise option and you do play competitive shooters like Valorant for example as well, then the extra money probably will be worth it for you. Especially consider that this is a gaming monitor that is going to last you a very, very long time. 1440p and 240Hz, that's a spec that is not going to die anytime soon. So if you have the cash available and the GPU horsepower available as well, I will leave some links down below. As always, a huge thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.